Hi everyone, it's Tasha. Welcome back to my channel. I am always in local thrift shops looking for high-end style home decor for a whole lot less than retail. Today I want to walk you through a DIY that you can do from home without even making a trip to the thrift store. It's super fast, it's super easy, and very, very affordable. So join me as we try out this weekend DIY paper mache. So the first paper mache DIY that I want to share with you today is going to be a bowl. I'm not sure if you've really been following paper mache or paying much attention to these sort of pieces, but they have been trending for a couple of years now, and there's been a very popular one at Restoration Hardware. There's still a very popular one at Mache & Co. There's paper mache at Ember Interiors, Pottery Barn, lots of different places like that. And so I'm finally getting around to trying out this DIY trend on my own. You can see there's lots of different bowl options online, and they all have this nice like textural feeling to them. They're organic, they're not perfectly shaped, and this is some of my just inspiration photos that I've been looking at on Pinterest. So I'm going to be trying my own bowl, and it's going to be so easy. You're going to love it. So the first thing that you're going to need is a bowl to just mix up and soak your paper in, and also whatever bowl you want to be using for your mold. Then you're also going to need some white school glue. I'm just using a big one from Staples that's non-toxic. You're going to need some regular flour and some salt. For this type of paper mache, I'm actually going to be using toilet paper, and that sounds a little bit funny, but one of the great things about using toilet paper rather than newspaper and some of the other traditional materials is that toilet paper breaks down so easily, so you can literally just put this in hot tap water and it will start to disintegrate immediately, and you can be making your paper mache object within 5 minutes rather than waiting for hours for the paper to soak and be soft enough for you to tear apart. So literally maybe like a minute and a half later, I just dug right in and started tearing my toilet paper apart. You could see that I just pulled out the cardboard roll as I was doing that. It's very easy. I didn't even bother to unwind all the toilet paper first and do a big huge bowl. I just did a bowl where I stuck the toilet paper roll straight in. So as easy as possible. And then I'm just wringing out all of that excess water. It makes it easier if you do have a little colander in the sink, in my opinion, just to catch the pieces that kind of fall off as you do that, but you don't absolutely have to. You can just squeeze it out by hand here. Not all the water, but a lot of it. Then the next thing that I'm adding is some white school glue. So I'm using about 1/2 cup of white glue in this recipe, and you see me here in the footage just doing 2 1/4 cups to make the half. And the next thing I'm going to do is add my flour. I'm using about 1.5 cups of flour. This could just be regular baking flour, nothing fancy or specific here. And then 3 tablespoons of salt. And then you're ready to mix up your ingredients together. I'm just doing this by hand. It seemed the easiest way to go. You're gonna get messy, but that's part of the fun. So it actually doesn't take long to sort of mix it all together, and you're going to end up with a pretty thick batter, like a kind of cookie dough sort of material. And then you're gonna watch me right here make a huge mistake. So don't do this. I flipped over my bowl that I wanted to use as my mold, and I just started putting this all over it and shaped my whole bowl, and then I realized no, I have to rewind because I completely forgot to put on the saran wrap. You're supposed to put saran wrap over your mold first so that it will release once it dries. It would have been a terrible mess if I had not gone back and redone this. So here I am just doing it all over again, and hopefully I will save you the trouble of doing that by sharing that and making a point of it. So I'm just patting it all on firmly, and you can kind of do whatever shape you want. I'm not wanting mine to be completely as tall as the mixing bowl that I'm using as my mold, so I'm just going up as high as I want. I want it to be a little bit imperfect, not perfectly straight sides or anything like that. And then at the end, I'm just taking slightly wet hands and kind of rubbing over the edge to set everything and smooth it out. And then I'm taking the whole bowl outside in the bright sunlight to just sit and dry a little bit. You can also dry these faster in your oven. I also have my bowl in here, and at this low temperature, the plastic wrap is not going to melt or anything either, and so I'm just waiting until they dry. You can tell it's kind of getting there, but definitely not ready to come off yet. So once that was done and completely dry, I just pulled it right off of the mold. The cling wrap came right off very easily, and I'm just giving mine a coat of paint with a color called Modern Gray by Sherwin-Williams. You could leave it as is, you can texture it up with a dirt rub or any sort of finish that you really want to. For this one, for now, I'm just leaving it in this kind of gray color because I like the way that it looks kind of mottled along with the initial cream color of the regular base. And then you can style this in several different ways. I mean, the possibilities are really endless. I've played around with it with just some little decorative objects, some different florals in the side, and I really like how it looks with this sprig of baby's breath inside of it. I love the imperfect edges around the top and the little cracks. Like, that's what I was going for, was this organic shape. You can also put maybe like faux fruit in here. I had found these pomegranates at the thrift store in my last video for $4.50. They're so realistic looking, and I just played around with putting those inside the bowl, and they look really nice in this as well. The second paper mache DIY I want to show you are some decorative beads. I love this set from Etsy. These are amazing, just so rustic with the tassels and everything. I also thought that this piece from Wayfair was pretty cool. It's actually like a chain, which seems a little more difficult to do, but still doable if you have the time. So I'm going to be making beads, kind of like the first photo. And the first thing I'm doing is just taking some of these drinking straws. These are eco-friendly, like biodegradable straws, by the way, and I'm just cutting them into little 2-inch pieces, and then I'm making another batch of paper mache the same way, except for I'm adding a stick blender in here. I just wanted to see if that got it any smoother. It kind of does. You don't have to have it, but just another option if you happen to have one of those on hand. And so for the beads, first I'm just making little balls, and I want to make them around 2 inches ish. So I'm just looking back at my inspiration photo again. It's kind of like making meatballs and just making these little forms and laying them out. So I'm just eyeballing it. I don't want them to end up being exactly the same shape or too perfect or too round, so that's perfect because it's easier to do it without trying to get them perfectly. Mine ended up being around 2 inches, and then I'm just taking those pieces of the straw that I have cut and putting it right through the center and sitting those out. And I'm just pressing lightly against the top and the bottom to flatten it out a bit, and you'll see me do that again in just a minute. Having the straw through the center of this as it hardens will, of course, leave the space for the hole where you can then string them up. So that's why I'm putting the straw through the center. I went ahead and made 12 of these beads with this batch, and I had a lot left over after that. I just kind of stopped there because I was doing more than one thing with this batch, but you could make probably like at least 30 or so beads, if not more, with a regular batch based on my recipe if you're just looking to do beads. So what I've done is I've put these into the oven. This is just set at 175 degrees, and that's Fahrenheit. So they'll dry a little bit faster. And so what I'm doing is I just figured I would flip them over a little bit as they're starting to dry. You can probably tell that they're a bit harder at this point, but they're not done. And so what I'm doing is I'm just taking each one and flipping it over, pushing the straw through, and just putting it onto the other side so that they might be a little bit more even, instead of one, side of it being completely flat and the other not. Just let gravity do its work both directions. And I've done that with all of them now, so I'm just gonna pop them back in. Now I somehow managed to lose the footage for it, but I painted these beads once they were dry with Sherwin-Williams Outer Banks color. It's a light tan color. It's almost got some sage in it. So the ones on the left there that you see are already completely finished. I have them painted with the Outer Banks color and then kind of modeled and tapped all over with this burnt umber color brown that you just saw me take out. So I'm just doing that to add a little bit more texture. I'm mostly patting it, but sometimes kind of rubbing it all over the edges, and it just makes them look to me more kind of like stone almost. Just gives them a lot of interest and texture, so I wanted to do that last step. You could leave them in plain, you could paint them a solid color. You could even do some maybe gold touches or something would be fun. This is what I was going for, was a more rustic look like that first inspiration photo. And then I tried out a few different ways of stringing them. First I tried some ribbon and kind of this taupe color, and that was kind of nice if you wanted to go that direction. I ended up changing and going with this plain cotton cord. It's a pretty thicker cotton cord. It just fit through the holes that I had made, and I put a little bit of tape tightly around the tip of that so that it was easier to string them up. That made it go through the hole a little bit easier. But basically I just tied a knot on each side of each bead, and then also another knot like maybe 3/4 of an inch away, so that I would space them out kind of exactly like I wanted. So you can see how I'm doing the spacing on mine. Of course you can string them any way you want, and if you make a big huge batch you could also just put them right beside each other without any spacing. I think that would look really cool too. This is what I ended up with, mine spaced out with these little knots, and I'm really happy with it. I think that it just looks really cool as a sort of little objet d'art, and they look really nice in a bowl kind of draped over the side. I kind of played with these too and styled them in several different places. They really seem to stand out on a stack of books, like kind of just on the books by themselves or coming out of a bowl onto some books. They just kind of shine in that situation. But also just tried them here on these linen wrapped books, which I will link above how to linen wrap some books if you would like to watch that video. I tried them over here in this antique dough bowl that I have, along with some vintage books, and I think that was probably my favorite look, was draped over the books and kind of coming out of the dough bowl. This is over on our hutch in our dining area. I just love these beads, and I feel like I want to make another batch of them immediately. So let's see what happens. There are so many different paper mache projects out there, so just take a look online and be inspired. This is all from Amber Interiors. These are different paper mache pieces that they sell, and then I saw on Wayfair they actually sell a lot of paper mache things as well that are very pretty. I'll link to some of my favorites of those in case you don't have time to make your own. And then the last paper mache project I wanted to share with you was this little toothpick holder. I have this perfect little spot where I normally keep our toothpicks right beside our salt and pepper here on our dining table on this little stone tray, and so far they've just been sitting in this plastic container that they came in, so I wanted something just a little more special, since that's something on the table that we kind of look at every time we sit there and eat. It's just these little touches that kind of make a house a home, in my opinion. So I'm just taking that plastic toothpick holder that I already had and using that as my mold. I don't want my holder to end up being as tall as that is. I want my toothpicks to kind of stick out of the top some from it. So I'm just going maybe a little over halfway up on that container, but basically I'm just using the bottom of it as my mold and pressing all around it. And you'll notice I did use the saran wrap over it this time. So before that was completely done drying, I decided to take this wooden little dowel rod and just press it into the sides while it was still wet and make some little indentions, some little divots down the side, just to give it a little bit more interest. And then once it was completely done drying, I just slid it off of the mold again, and I'm going over this one as well with the paint color Modern Gray that I used on the bowl. On this one I'm doing the paint fully. I'm not leaving it with a mottled color. I want it to look completely covered, a little bit more like concrete, I guess. I'm not painting the inside of this, just for obvious reasons, since it's going to hold toothpicks that go in your mouth. I don't want paint on the inside, and the glue that I used in this clay is non-toxic, so it'll be totally fine for the toothpicks to sit in the inside with just that. And then I'm taking it outside. You can see our colorful chalk art out there, but I'm just giving it a little bit of a dirt rub on the outside only, again, of course, just for a little added depth there. You could also use coffee grounds or cinnamon or anything like that to kind of color it and get in the little grooves. The nice thing about this is that, unlike when you're doing kind of faux pottery and you have to use something to add texture like baking soda or something, this already has tons of texture when you make it, so you're just adding color on top of whatever texture you have. and this is how it turned out. This is such a tiny little detail in our home, but I'm so glad to finally have something other than the silly plastic container that the toothpicks came in to sit these in that looks nice on our table, and I'm so happy with it. So those were the 3 paper mache projects that I worked on this week. The possibilities are really endless, and again, I will link to some of my favorites online in case you want to use them for inspiration, or in case you don't have time to make your own but might want to purchase one. And let me know if you are interested in making your own and what you think you might make. Also, if you are interested in DIY content or usually more thrift content, then go ahead and hit subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel, and you will see more of these videos in your feed. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all at the next video.